Welcome to the Wild Pitch Podcast, hosted by Brian Gales, Jimmy Gales, Brian Dorsey, and Christopher Rojas.
We are back yet again doing another episode of the Wild Pitch Podcast, and this one's going to be, a little Long Island centric, as we have with us a very special guest who is perhaps one of the most important media guys for high school and college sports in baseball on Long Island. We're going to maybe turn the table on him because we're used to getting interviewed by him. And, he's always the guy doing the interviewing, so we're going to have a little fun with him.
Yep.
So the guest is Vinny Messana from Axcess Baseball. Vin, I remember when you came out, it was baseball on the island.
Yep.
And, listen, I know I've heard this before. I want you to just tell the listeners how it all started, because, I know it's a very special story to you. Isn't it all?
Yeah.
So just share that.
Well, first, I appreciate taking the time to have me on. I know it seems, 3 months ago when I had you on mine, and now you guys have formed your own media conglomerate, which is nice to see.
We're very minor league over here, though, baby.
There's 10 listeners constitute a conglomerate.
Well, I use that word loosely, but and I remember actually you were at my banquet, and when we were with Kyle Young, and his head was over the backdrop because it was only a 6'5" backdrop, and he's 7 feet tall, so his head was over it. Unbelievable. But
it was a good night.
Yeah, that was fun. But so if I've told the story on a couple of occasions, but it never really gets boring for me, just because it is meaningful. And like you said, in 2013, my dad passed away, and I also had my baseball career taken away because I tore my rotator cuff and labrum when I was at Adelphi. So never even got to play in a game there. I had played at Farmingdale for 2 years, and then I transferred to Adelphi, pitched in the fall, tore my labrum later on in the fall, and ended up having the surgery right before the season. So that stunk, and then losing my dad was a double whammy. So I felt like I needed a positive outlet. And really the only other thing that I had ever taken an interest in besides playing baseball was writing about it. And when I was in a web journalism class at Adelphi, our assignment was we had to start a blog. And I really wanted to do it on the Mets because I was a diehard Met fan. But my teacher said, it's a convoluted market out there for Mets or Yankees blogs. It's hard to separate from the pack. So he said, I would recommend you do something unique. So the previous year when Stony Brook had made it to the World Series rather, I remember seeing it on TV when I was bartending, and I was just shocked. I always considered myself up to date with the local baseball news, but I didn't even know about it. So I just felt like it got underappreciated. So that was the motivation behind starting my blog. I'm sorry?
That's what spawned it.
Yes. So I called it Baseball on the Island. Just, I didn't even put much thought into it. I just thought it was appropriate. And, I maintained it really that whole spring semester. It was 2013. And I really just covered college because I just felt like it was too big of a task to cover high school without any I didn't really follow it the previous few years, so I would have gone into it completely blind, I think. So it was a lot easier to do college. As you guys know, the information is all readily available online, so I just wanted it to kind of be like a grand central station of college baseball news on Long Island. So that was my motivation behind originally starting this all, and that was in spring of 2013.
I remember originally searching baseball on the island, and I can remember Hawaii. A lot of Hawaii baseball stuff came up.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Maybe because Tech was down there.
What was that?
Tech was down in Hawaii. They played at Hawaii. Maybe that's why?
Oh, that's right. In 2015 they were there, I think, or 2013. Yeah.
No, I just think it's because baseball on the island. Like I'm sure they have.
Why?
Could be right.
There you go.
It wasn't Vinny.
But they did go there, though.
You guys are getting a little too deep here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Vin, listen, I always kind of marvel at how much info comes out, and how do you do it? How do you cover all these games? What kind of staff do you have? And what's the requirement to get that content out like you do?
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was 100% me. I think the only kid that helped me out early on, because like I said, I bartended. So on Saturdays and Sundays, I was working doubles at Villa Lombardi's for 12 hours a day. So I couldn't even watch the games. That was the funny thing as I was writing about it. But I had a kid that played with me at Farmingdale. His name was Patrick Gilbride. And I remember he was like, "Oh, I see you started your website. I always wanted to be a writer." So he was my first person that helped out. He used to do the weekend recaps, which I still continue to do to this day, which ended up being a revenue stream for me, because I would say to last year I had that physical therapy, rather, they sponsored it. So I said, "Hey, look, every Saturday and Sunday we're getting hundreds of views on this page." So they wound up putting their name on it, which was pretty good news for me, considering it was taking me up so much time. But anyway, to get the information out there, I have internship programs set up with Stony Brook, Adelphi, Hofstra, LIU Post, and Suffolk. So I had put the word out to all the heads of the journalism department. If you have journalism students specifically that are looking to cover baseball, have them reach out to me. So usually in the beginning of the semester, I'll get a flurry of emails from kids. A couple of them, they kind of don't really know what it takes. They just hear sports and they send a resume in, but they kind of weed themselves out right off the bat because they don't know the work that goes into it. And then there's a handful of people that are really serious about it, but they just maybe they don't have good skills. So those are the other people that weed themselves out. And then after all, they'll probably end up being about 5 to 10 kids that fit the requirements, that love baseball, that have good writing skills, that fit the qualifications to get the internship credits. And that's usually how it goes. And then
that's funny. That's funny you said. I don't mean to cut you off, Vinny, but that's funny how you're describing it, right? Because it's a lot like a tryout, right? If you think about it, you got people who are not that serious, right? They don't want to put in the hard work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you can liken that to an athlete who says he wants to be an athlete but doesn't really get after it or put in the effort, right?
Exactly.
You got the guys who are interested but maybe not as talented,
mm-hmm.
right? And unfortunately, because they don't have the talent, they have the interest but don't have the talent, they can't make it into your field, or they can't make it into the baseball world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're left with those that you actually get to choose from because of their talents and their desire and their effort, right? And all of a sudden now you have the makings of something, So there's a lot of parallels there if you think about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, in the beginning, I felt like there was some people that I had to let in just to start expanding our reach. I just needed to get anybody. And so that was early on, in that as it's progressed now, I'm actually pretty impressed with the caliber of kids that are willing to work for me. And I always it reminds me of a 50 Cent quote when he says, "I didn't go to Harvard, but the people that I hire went there." So I try to implement that, where I didn't get into Syracuse's journalism program, which is the best in the country, but I have like a minor league system up there. So the kids that usually make it into that program, I use them in the summer. So even though we might not have the same length of baseball this summer, which who knows what's going on, but I usually have a Syracuse journalism student cover the Hamptons League. And if you guys noticed the last couple of years, the kids, honestly, I think they've been better than me. Last year, the kid, Matt Weinstein, he was phenomenal. I wanted him to cover 1 game a week. He did like 3 games a week. And then I had a kid, Jonah, the year before that. He's probably going to end up being an ESPN anchor. And I mean, frankly, he's better than me. Like, the amount of information that they can retain from looking at a box score and then asking questions, that's a skill. I mean, you have to be able to compartmentalize all the information on a box score, and then you have a minute to ask questions. And that's I'm pretty impressed with the caliber of kids that we have on Long Island that wind up being in the journalism field. So that's, to answer the original question, that's how I get the information out there. I need to rely on other people. I really can't do it myself.
Yeah, I mean, we've noticed and appreciated about you is your hustle.
Thank you.
Remember a couple of years ago, we were down in Fort Myers, underclass, right? I mean, you were willing to stay. I think you had a room at the Econo Lodge.
Oh, 5-star. That sounds like a 5-star hotel.
Yeah, but it worked out.
Especially in Florida.
Both of us.
Oh,
actually.
Yeah.
We wound up staying on a condo.
Wait,
on the
so
beach.
wait, hold on. He said you were going to stay at the Econo Lodge. Did you have like bodyguards with you? Or, it wasn't.
That
was $60 a night, that hotel. I mean,
well, that when they have those big tournaments, the prices of the rooms, right? They skyrocket, and there's no room. So
$60 was a skyrocketed price.
Yeah,
it was more like a 5 and dime place, probably.
Sean saved me on that one. I got to say, that's something that I probably haven't shared with anybody. The people that have put their neck out for me on that trip, and then also I went to Texas A&M with Hofstra. Same thing. I mean, and that was the year before. I had no money, so Coach Russo really helped me out down there too. But yeah, going back to that point, like those are the funnest things about it. I mean, it's great to watch baseball here, but being able to experience those elite tournaments, I mean, to me, that's what keeps me going, because as much as I like baseball, I would say I would even whittle it down to more specifically, I like high-level baseball. I want to see good players, not just anybody playing. So, like, going to a Power 5 conference game, I mean, on a weekend, to me, that gets me excited. I went to Cary the year before that. I don't think – no, you guys weren't there. But in 2018, when all those Northeast teams, Franklin Pierce, Stack, Tech, Post, everybody was there. That was probably right there in terms of my best experiences, going to Team USA complex. And, I stayed at a hotel. I think, who was it? Coach Malvagna had hooked it up. But those are the most exciting times for me, is getting to watch those high-level baseball tournaments.
So how about the experience in Fort Myers when you got Brian Gels, Sean Manning, Mike Pesci as your roommates? How do you get through that weekend? I mean, that's
it. And there was the other one who what was the other kid's name? He's went to Chaminade and he's in the minor league system. Yes. Yeah, so we had a real motley crew. That was
How did you guys take Vinny out, Brian? I hope, and get his wear out his
we went out a couple of times.
Oh yeah, we went out.
Hey, Vinny, is Brian a good guy to go out with, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. That whole group was, man, and I would do that again if I could, honestly. But I was 25. It was a little. It was. I would be mad if I didn't get to experience those types of things. You gotta let loose a little sometimes.
100%.
You also didn't you also travel to DR?
Oh yeah, with Sal. That was earlier that year. That was another experience. But from the baseball perspective.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you from the baseball perspective, though. Actually a couple things. Like, I guess one, that's an eye opener, right? You get to see the level of talent, right? But then the other, I guess, residual effect of going out there for the baseball is that you get to see how people like really, really live challenging lives, right? And what, the takeaway for some of those kids here on the island, right, who most parts all have pretty good financial means. They go out there and then all of a sudden they see how other people necessarily, living under, some really shady conditions. You got to come out of there. I hope you walk out of there with a perspective of life, right? Like, well, man, these
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would say that was my number one baseball experience, actually, hands down. I was so thrilled when Sal asked me to go, because all I've heard is, oh, you got to go to the Dominican Republic trip. And as an outsider, I felt like, why would I get invited? I wasn't a scout, I wasn't a player, I wasn't a coach. So that just to get invited was kind of that one moment where I felt like all my work was kind of vindicated, that Sal considered me to even be going there. But from a baseball perspective, it does not beat it at all. It was a bunch of professional baseball players. You're playing on state-of-the-art facilities, and it was every day. Every day there was one game. So I know Downey always says he loves it because it's, 9 a.m. on the field, 12 o'clock, noon, you're done and you hit the golf course. So it's a perfect mesh of baseball and, recreational activities. And for the Long Island kids, I mean, I don't know if they fully understand how good the baseball is down there until they get there. I would say there's definitely no way that they would understand that until they go down there. And, they're just too young to fully grasp it. Because when you take at least that group of kids at 2017, they held their own. They won a couple games out of the 7 games. I want to say they won 2. But they didn't have to face we didn't have the Long Island pitchers pitch. It was only the Dominican kids pitch. So obviously they probably wouldn't have won those 2 games if the Long Island kids. And the only ones that did pitch were, the 2 or 3 kids that were Division I arms. Not everybody was even considered to pitch. So the kids, it was an eye-opening experience. The baseball players down there they're on another level compared to here. And frankly, it made me worry for the future of our American baseball players because we can't hold a candle to them in terms of their ambition that they bring to the field every day. Nobody here, I don't think, has that type of mentality because frankly, they're not forced to have that mentality.
Right. That's interesting that you say that, right? Because their only way of means is to get off that island is probably through the sport of baseball. Mm-hmm. So they're motivated by something deeper, right?
Yeah.
So that is something. They're hungry. So that's a great point. And
well, in that year,
Vinny's the big problem here. If you really break it down, Vinny's the reason. He does such a great job.
Long Island kids feel good about themselves.
Yeah, they think they made it. They're on Axcess Baseball, man. If you're on Axcess Baseball, you made it.
Well, I think it's a blessing and a curse. When I cover these 12U games, it makes the kids feel good, but sometimes you do want to make them continue to be hungry. And there are some parents that really get it. They'll say to me, don't write about my son until you feel like he's worthy of it. Don't just do it because you know me or you feel like you owe me a favor. So I think that always that goes a long way with me. And maybe they're using reverse psychology because they think I'm going to do it anyway. But I think some of the parents have the best of intentions. And from that group of kids that year, I remember Matt Hogan was down there and he's at Vanderbilt. He's one of the rare kids that comes from means that doesn't, feel like he's above anybody else. So I think that's the proper mentality that you need to have because when it push comes to shove, the parents here, they'll pay for their kids and they're able to spoil them and everything, but you can't make the kids feel like they've made it before. And frankly, a few of the kids that went down there, they were humbled by that and they went off to college and they wind up coming right back home because they didn't have what it took to make it.
Exactly.
Nobody, I mean, you were saying this before, Jim, how locked in Vinny is and knowing, everything that's going on the island. I mean, an argument can be made that you're tuned in better than anybody on what's going on with Long Island baseball, right?
Thank you.
And I think it shows, obviously, with all the work and some of the, the reporting you do and the recognition that is out there. Do you run into challenges maybe, though, where you're not necessarily acknowledging a player and parents are in your ear about it, on the low, maybe emailing you or, how come they mention my son in this? And, are you experiencing any of that?
Yeah, it happens all the time. And I think it comes with the territory because I try to tell myself, if parents didn't take it seriously, then they wouldn't be emailing me. If they think it's legitimate and they feel like their son has been snubbed, they'll let me know. So I think I've gotten thicker skin over the years where if that would have happened when I first started, it might have broke me broke me emotionally, but I've kind of gotten used to it. And I also, I think it's a good thing. If they're reaching out to me and the kid is legitimately good and I missed them, they should get recognized. Because contrary to belief, some people think that I don't report on a certain kid because parent hasn't been in my ear enough or he's not affiliated with a certain program. That's not the case. I think it's a meritocracy. If the kids are good, they're going to get written about. And you look at the kids that are at the Division I level from Long Island, Division II, they got written about because they're that quality of player. So I try to take pride in identifying them at a young age. You know, you look at a player like Johnny Castagnazzi. I was just looking back because I was so bored at some of my old articles, and the first time I mentioned him was September of 2016 when he was stepping foot into high school for the first time. And I feel like that's a player that I was correct about. But for everybody,
you were locked in on, right?
Yeah.
Now, what about the flip side of that, though? Like, do you get
Yep.
the email from a parent who wants their son to be recognized, and in the back of your mind, you're like, wait a minute, this kid should not be acknowledged at all because he's not talented?
Yeah, and there's times that I've been wrong about that. I'll admit it. I remember that same year I wrote about a pitcher from Newfield High School, and you know, I felt like he was ahead of the curve, and he was, you know, whatever that may be at that age, 78, 79 miles an hour in 9th grade, and the kid didn't even end up making the varsity team. And I had written so glowingly about him, and those are the things that make me humbled. It makes you work a little harder because it's like, wait, I was wrong about my assessment on this player, and there was no motivation beyond that. The father wasn't greasing my pockets. It was a kid that I saw to showcase, and I was impressed. He was in 9th grade. I lived in Lake Ronkonkoma. He was from Selden, so I was like, wow, he's in my backyard. And sometimes you miss on kids, and it makes me feel bad about myself, honestly. But you realize it's, scouts that do this for a living that are paid very well. They're not accurate all the time on first round picks, let alone 14-year-olds from Selden. So I had to realize that it comes with the territory.
Yeah, and sometimes that's on the kid too. He didn't put in the work. He may have stopped. He thought he made it as well.
Yeah, because he actually thanked me, like when I saw him at a game. He was like, "Oh, you're Vinny. I remember you wrote that feature story on me," and I kind of wanted to go back into like a turtle shell because I was like, "Oh boy, this kid is not. He's not what I thought he was."
A couple of years, he could tell his son that he was awesome, and somebody got in the way, or he tells his friends in the bar, so you helped him out.
That's right. He pulls that up when he goes to the bar. The article.
he's forever remembered.
Yeah, that's true. That's the one good thing about the internet. These articles are forever. The videos are forever, but that's also a negative too. It doesn't go away, and that's what you probably tell your athletes too on a team tech. It's like you watch what you put on the internet.
Oh yeah,
it is forever.
Oh yeah.
No, at the end of the day, it's great for the kids. What I see, I think just the kids getting that experience of getting interviewed and going on Instagram Live. I mean, that's awesome experience for them. Not only just baseball, but in life, and being able to do public speaking and interviews now, because that's not easy for a kid to get interviewed, knowing that's live and in front of people, so that experience is awesome.
It's not easy for the pros,
No, it's not. I mean, think about yourself. I mean, I can look back at myself. I mean, if I had to do an interview at that age, good Lord. Sometimes that takes some time to acquire that skill to be able to just have a conversation.
Yeah, I've noticed that, honestly. I mean, I try to be critical of myself. I think that when I first started, when you listen back, you almost cringe sometimes at the way you sound. Especially like being, Italian American. I just think sometimes I lay on accent a little too heavily.
Yeah. So there's the other way. Well, don't feel bad, because we look back 6 episodes from now and we can't believe we're still doing this. Is how bad we are. So
yeah, it's like anything though, man. You do it a few times, you listen back, you try to make some improvements. I know for myself, like I think right now I'm way better than when I started, but then you listen to Joe Buck and you say, wow, this guy puts me to shame. So it's, you just got to be critical of yourself.
Yeah, Chris and Brian, when I went to a junior college, I had a public speaking class, and of all the people, I was probably the worst. And my teacher, actually, this man, he pulled me aside. He goes, listen, this isn't for you. He goes, but I'm going to give you a C. and I mean, my lips, I couldn't even move my lips. Now, you give me a mic, you can't get it out of my hand.
Oh, yeah.
So it goes to show you, though, right? As you develop and gain confidence. So
yeah, it's amazing with some of the coaches. My takeaway is how even coaches, how unprepared they could be for interviews. And, I almost, and like you mentioned, Brian, with the with the Instagram live interviews, I try to interview older kids because I don't want them to be intimidated. And like, even if a kid is significant talent, he might, get a little nervous when he's on camera. So I try to pinpoint like older, more experienced player. But even with coaches, like I said, like you'll put a microphone in their face and it seems like they're talking for the first time. But like for the Long Island guys, like Dom Scala, he's a natural. He's a natural on a microphone. That's his element.
The movie star.
Disco Dom, you can't. Disco Dom won't run away from no microphone.
Exactly. So I went to their cocktail dinner this year with Brian Cashman, and Dom was the MC of it. He's that's his element. So even older people, sometimes it just never comes, but it's a skill that I feel like you can improve on though. But so
while you're there, Vin, I'm going to stop you because I have some questions later, but. Let's just hit this one. Who is the most interesting coach you've covered in your career? The guy that just comes to mind is just like funny, or just somebody you enjoy talking to?
That's a really, really good one. I mean, the one that I would say gives the most insightful answers is probably McSherry from Longwood. Just in terms of how smooth he is and how he, I could just give him the floor and he'll just talk seamlessly. So people like him, Josh Gudis of Hop Hog, same thing from a strictly like a rapport standpoint that I have with them. I would say those are the two guys that stand out. But it's always exciting to talk to the guys with the most stories and experience. So the more history that they have, I think the more of an insightful interview that it is. But those don't always go hand in hand. The people with the most, background aren't necessarily the ones that I have the best rapport with interviewing.
Right.
Yeah, that's big, right? Being able to connect and to get them to feel comfortable to speaking, right? That's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that it only comes with time. Like you just everyone speaks in their own cadences. So knowing when they're gonna continue, when they're just taking a break in the story versus when they're giving you a short-winded answer and you need to gather your thoughts and go another route with your line of questioning is a whole nother issue.
Well, that's where you come in too. You get that high school kid that gets frozen on a question, you being able to kind of segue into something, make them more comfortable, or just keep that awkward pause down, and
some of them are very uncomfortable. I was just like, I'll retweet the On This Day in History, and the one yesterday, I don't want to single the kid out, but if you saw it was yesterday, and he was the player of the game, and it was almost, I remember when in the moment I thought it was a little bit uncomfortable, but listening to it back was cringeworthy. It almost seemed like someone bed him, like, what's the fewest amount of words that you can use in this interview? Because he was giving me the most cliched responses in the fewest amount of words, and I was like, wow.
Was it like Belichickian or what?
What was that?
Was it Belichickian?
Yeah, exactly. He went to the Patriots school for the Patriots media classes. It was uncomfortable, but I guess out of the course of a year, what is there, maybe 100 high school games to cover. Not every kid is going to be insightful and thoughtful.
What I find that the biggest thing you see with the kids is you need like a wide lens because they move around so much.
Yeah, that's like their uncomfortable tick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they always move around.
So then they got the kids behind them too, right? That makes it tough.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that's the new thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because Christine, my famed photographer, that's like a pet peeve of hers is when the kids do that on camera. And I'm like, you couldn't be more wrong. I said, first of all, let the kids have fun, like at the most basic level. Yeah. And then number two is that's how you're going to go viral. Chances are the kid's not going to give some, Shakespeare soliloquy as an answer, but maybe they do something funny in the background that SportsCenter or whatever Bleacher Report picks up. I said, that's how we're going to continue to grow.
No, that's a home run for you when they do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, like the biggest video that we ever recorded was the Brock Murtha no-hitter, but it wasn't because he threw a no-hitter. It was because of the pile on the mound afterwards. So if we told them, hey guys, make sure you have a very subdued celebration, act like you've been there before, it's not going to get on Barstool. So that's where I fall with that.
That's good. So today you're telling me, we spoke this morning that you were going to take a ride out to Montauk with your fiance.
Actually, we pushed it off to tomorrow because of the weather. So I can't lie about that. We didn't go today.
And that's fine. I'm more concerned about the fiance.
Are you going to be allowed to work anymore?
Yeah, I mean, are we going to get game coverage now after you get married, or is this thing going down?
It's not going to change at all, believe me. If anything, I have to work more to pay the bills.
Good. Hopefully she heard that and she's laughing.
She's in the room watching All American on Netflix.
Oh, I heard that's pretty good. I got to check that out.
It is really good, honestly. It's only 2 seasons, so you could go right through it in a couple of days.
I got a question for you from Dorsey, who obviously, you know, as you can tell, he dropped off because he was having technical difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
How many episodes in are we now? He can't figure it out, Jim?
No, like almost 20. This guy, he's a part-timer. He's like a guest. He's like a guest for us.
Yeah. So we got a question from one of our listeners, Brian Dorsey, and he wants to know. He wants me to ask you about the Mike Liederman Classic that you're doing this year, and you know, I guess can you share with us, you know, what made you decide to kind of honor him and what that's all about?
So the backstory with that was it's Sean Manning's idea. He was close with him, and he told me, you know, he wanted to base it off of the Boomer Esiason game, which is so popular, the Long Island versus the Boroughs, and he wanted me to do it because he felt like I didn't have a dog in the fight. You know, if I put up a vote once we nominate the players, if I put up a vote, it's not sketchy. It's Axcess Baseball doing it, and it's because there's players that I've seen that I can, with knowledge of their situation and their talent, I can nominate them and say, all right, these are players that are worthy of it. And by using my platform, I just think it reaches the most amount of people. And, you know, covering the game, I think, would be a slam dunk, because one of my dreams was doing more of my own content instead of covering games. I want to do more, you know, Axcess sponsored things. And I think it was a home run because it's going to be the best of both worlds. It's going to be Long Island versus the boroughs. So from a strictly baseball perspective, it's going to be great. And then from the perspective of, if we have the baseball lifestyle guys there with their cameras, that's going to be content heaven. So I just think it's a great combination of the baseball recruiting side of things and the content for me. So I think it's a perfect mix. And then the Mike Liederman, you know, I can't take credit for it. It was Sean's idea, but I think it's a great time to honor him. He meant so much to the baseball community, and, you know, so many people speak glowingly about him. You know, I only met him on one occasion, actually, on that Texas A&M trip at Hofstra, but you know, not 1,000 people can't be wrong about how much the guy did for the baseball community. So I just think it was a good way to honor him, and it's an event that hopefully is not affected by this. Obviously, everything's up in the air, but it's going to be in August at Hofstra, and you know, we got some cool partners behind it. Rawlings gonna donate some stuff. Big League Chew, I was able to meet the owner of that, and I told him about the idea. He said, "Well, could, you know, give some product for the event," and Baseball Lifestyle will probably bring their videographers there. So I think it'll touch on a lot of different things that will resonate with the baseball community.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. I think, you know, now that I'm hearing this, like, Mike Liederman was a very close friend of ours, and you know, I'm thinking now we can do a whole podcast on stories about him one day. It's gonna be really funny.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And actually, one of the ideas that I had for it, as I said, before the game or after the game, whatever, is to interview coaches that played for him or with him. And once I think I put that on Twitter maybe, and immediately, like, the Maritime coach said, I'll be first. Like, he is he was one of my closest friends.
Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie. Actually, I should mention that he's probably one of the best interviews as well. He's just very down to earth, insightful, and you know, I got to say, he really impressed me, because when I was first starting out, he had messaged me and said, "Hey, when can we get some love for the guys in the Bronx?" And I said, "You know, I would love to, but it's just, you know, I'm small, I'm starting out, hopefully in the future." And then like a year later, I had called him and I said, "You know, I think I'm going to add you guys to our coverage area." And we met up, and he gave me a Maritime hat. He got me a cup of coffee, and he told me, you know, everything there was to know about his background, his team. And I was just impressed, because I was like, he didn't have to do that. He could have just said, "Oh, thanks, I appreciate it." So he's been one of the most genuinely nice coaches to me since I've started.
All right, so we know the price, guys. It's hat. We got it. I think if we throw in a shirt on top of it, forget about it. Vin, before we get into some fun questions, where do you want to take this? What's your dream for this?
Yeah, I think the next move would probably be just other sports to get bigger than baseball, or as big as baseball. That's why we changed the name to Axcess from Baseball on the Island. Baseball on the Island was just too limited. It has to be Long Island. It has to be baseball. So it's just, it wasn't smart from a business perspective. I think the Axcess is a stronger brand. And then it gives you leeway to expand into other sports, which I've dabbled with a little bit. I don't know if you guys ever noticed the football coverage in the fall. You know, I have a reporter, Desiree, who's terrific. Honestly, she's much better than I could have ever done with football. So she did a really good job covering football. I had two interns cover basketball, and I had one reporter for lacrosse, which is on hold right now. But so that's really the immediate plan, is just to establish ourselves a little bit more in those sports, and then maybe down the road to expand to other territories. I think, you know, other baseball hotbeds, but it's just, that's a pipe dream at this point. It's just not, I don't have any immediate plans to make that happen.
Well, listen, you have to be proud of what you've done. I know as a college coach, you know, it's a good resource for us to even, you know, get some film on some guys. And
thank you.
I know, you know, it's like the Kleenex brand. I mean, when a kid wants to announce his announcement, it's nowhere else but Axcess, you know.
Thank you.
We just saw the other day, and it was first thing. Can I put this on Axcess? Yeah, go ahead.
That means a lot to me, because you know, the kids can do that on their own. So the fact that they, you know, go through me, I think that makes me proud, like you said. And I also think it was smart to do that a couple of years ago, because when I wasn't really anything, that was something to kind of level up a little bit. So like when Jason Diaz announced Miami in 2016, that was something that got people's attention, because
not there anymore though, Vinny.
Yeah, no, I know, but it was
none of them ever stay there, Chris.
What's that?
Usually when they go to the big schools, they don't stay.
I know.
But from a buzz standpoint, it was good, because you know, he was.
No, I get it. And I think, you know, it's just, I think one of the unfortunate pitfalls, and this is no fault to your own, because I think we all agree, your platform is an excellent platform, and you know, it lends to, you know, it gives people who are not, you know, don't come from like a small town like in Texas, where it's big, you know, big football or Friday Night Lights or something like that, right? And we get a little taste of that through Axcess, right? You get that type of feel almost, you know, with the recognition of local talent. I think the pitfall, though, unfortunately, and again, there's nothing anybody can do about it, I think, is the feeling that that's the finish line. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and Jim, you always say there is no finish line, right? It doesn't stop there. Just because you made it somewhere or you made it onto some platform doesn't mean it's over, right? Doesn't mean this is it. You know what I mean? And I think so many times what we see is like kids think, you know, well, I was such and such this, you know, and you know, they feel entitled almost because of that, you know, because of some type of acknowledgement or recognition that they may have received. They almost feel like now they're owed something, you know, and that's not how the world works. We all know that's not how it works. you know?
Yeah.
It's almost like, Jim, you remember when we first got to Dom's and there was this, we won't say the kid's name, but, you know, we benched him. He goes, how dare you bench me? I'm a Under Armour All-American. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? You can't, you're hitting 050. What do I care if you're Under Armour All-American?
100%. Yeah, and look, there's certain accolades that I think are indicative of somebody being a legitimate player, but those ones that are motivated by how many events of theirs you attended, they mean nothing. And if anything, they're more indicative of this kid's parents is willing to pay him to, you know, to get that acknowledgement. So the longer that you're around it, and I'm just starting to realize now which things are actually merit based and which ones are, you know, whose dad donated the biggest amount of money.
So that's important to you as well, then, right? As somebody who wants to put out content and keep a meritocracy, as you stated earlier, right? That's got to be important to you.
Yeah, I've tried to do a couple things to combat that. Number one is doing the league MVP voting on my own. Actually, that was Stratton Padaris, his father's idea. He said, you know, you see these kids get the league MVPs, and a lot of the time it's political with who they know, who the dad knows. He said, why don't you do your own? So that next year in 2017, I made it a vote, but I only nominated 2 kids that were worthy of it. So in the case of, let's say, Suffolk County League 2 last year, it was between Tim McHugh or Joe Savino. So yeah, is it a popularity contest between those two? Absolutely. But it's a pitcher that had a 0.69 ERA and a batter that hit 492. So I think either of them are willing, you know, or are worthy of that acknowledgement. So yeah, so that's what I tried to do with that. And you know, it's good from a branding perspective, because if you look even on the Tech website, there's certain kids that'll say, you know, named Axcess preseason All Long Island, like a Bobby Bath, for example. So I like to think those are legitimate things I can post, because the reason why he's a preseason pitcher was because, you know, he went undefeated the year before that. There was no ulterior motive. So, but with the college commitments, you know, it definitely puts me between a rock and a hard place, because as a scout, I know certain kids are not capable of playing at those schools. And we all know the statistics. All these kids tend to seem to come back when they go down south, at least when they go to Division I schools. But at the same time, from a content perspective, it's gold for me, because that's what kids want to know is who's next. Who's the next 10th grader that's going to commit to an ACC school? And unfortunately, it sets such an impossibly high standard for the kid that even the elite of the elite, it's tough for them to live up to. So now, you know, all eyes are on them. Everybody that's not in his position is trying to tear them down, and the chips are just against them right from the beginning. And then we've seen time and time again, they don't even perform in high school, let alone getting to college. So I sympathize with them, and I feel bad, but I just think it's the system in general. It kind of rewards, it kind of lends itself to that repeating itself over and over until it gets switched, the model, to, hey, let's look at where you want to go to school, because that's where your heart's at, or, you know, that's where your major is. So the kids that are just committing because they watched them on ESPN the year before that in June, I mean, not 1% chance, maybe, if we're giving them benefit of the doubt that it's going to work out for all 4 years there.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want these kids to start when they commit to a big time school or any school. I mean, they have to realize they just entered themselves into a dogfight, you know, into the toughest battle yet. They didn't make it. We had a major league pitcher on the other day and pitched in the big leagues last year, and he had to get better. He went and pitched in the DR after the season. This guy's in the big leagues. You know, we get kids that they commit, and it's like, that's it. They don't need to go to these better tournaments. It's not about going to play baseball against good competition. It's, I'm committed. Why am I driving to Diamond Nation? Why am I going here? Well, you have to face the better competition to continue to get better, because those kids, you know, they're going to overcommit guys, some of these schools.
Yeah.
So you have to them. You have to continue to get better.
Yeah.
Those kids,
and they don't,
they're not sitting home,
and the schools don't care. That's like those schools, like if he doesn't show up on the first day, what does it matter to them? They have there's 12 kids in the Perfect Game top 100 in their recruiting class, so they're it's a dime a dozen for them. But
you're getting into a dogfight when you go to our school. Imagine those other schools, right? You go to the program, you got 40 kids there. We play 9. You're in a dogfight. And
it's true. Yeah, any college program. I mean,
no, but I'm just saying.
I know. Once you stop working, there's kids passing you by every single day, and that's for an 8, like what we see from the kids that play. So let's say 18U. So it's the summer of their senior season. Kids think that's a time to take off.
Right. I got to go to the beach. I got to be, I got to be with my buddies.
I got to work.
Take off of school. Right. Yeah.
And I'll give you guys a perfect example too. And this is a credit to what Frank has built up and to what you guys have done over the last 2 years. This kid was an exceptional pitcher, all county, all Long Island as a sophomore. And as you've seen hundreds and hundreds of times, those kids, they get the visions of grandeur and they think they're going to ACC and SEC school, and then all of a sudden they overplay their hand, and when they have to show up at those prospect camps and they're throwing 82, 83, and now all of a sudden the school isn't offering them the money that they thought they were going to get, or even a roster spot. And then what happens when senior year comes along and the schools on Long Island that all of a sudden we're offering them as a junior, now they don't have any money available. And now those kids, they can't even get a scholarship at a local school, let alone at the Power 5 school. And then in the case of this year, which this individual is really going to struggle finding a spot, because now there's no baseball season this year. So if it would have just, played their cards right and actually looked at what schools were realistic at that time in 11th grade, and maybe not try to go to, Clemson, they next year maybe they would be at New York Tech or Delphi, because when parents ask me what I think of those schools, and I tell them it's great baseball, and Delphi gets kids drafted every year, and Tech is going to only continue to get better because of the recruiting, they don't want to hear it. They think they're above that.
Yeah, no, it's true. So, well, listen, Vin, you've been outstanding, but I'm going to put you on the spot like you do the kids at the end.
That's fine.
So, let's see. Favorite place to cover a game on Long Island?
Oh, wow. I'd have to say Adelphi, just because I went there and because I always like to stop at the Roosevelt Field Mall after and get food in the food court. So just proximity, and for high school.
That's a great environment, though. The Adelphi.
Oh yeah.
Sitting in between the dorms and such, and watching Tech players hit balls onto the library, like that's fun.
Yeah, I was drawn to that. Yeah, and for high schools, that's a good one. You know what? I'm gonna say. I'm going to say Northport, because there's a deli over there, Patata.
I know another way to hit his man. He's total Italian, man.
That has the mobster sandwich that I love. So if you have good food, that'll get me to the games.
Very interesting. All right. Best player interview you ever had?
Oh, that's an easy one. Vinny Rice from Farmingdale last year when they won the Skyline Conference Championship. He a kid poured his heart out, and it was so authentic, because you know what he went through. I was actually at the game when he was in high school, when he tore his UCL while he was pitching on the mound. You knew that he was going to require Tommy John. Kid fought tooth and nail to get back. And it was his redshirt senior year, and he knew it was his last year to play baseball, and the kid won the tournament MVP, and you just saw his heart was on his sleeve. So that stands out to me. That was special.
All right, awesome. Let's see. Favorite movie? I love that he delays like the kids do, so he gets a little taste of his own mess.
Because for me, there's ones that are nostalgic to me when I was a kid, and then there's ones that I've seen recently. I don't know. I mean, when I look back, I would say My Cousin Vinny was like the funniest movie that I've ever seen, that I could watch over and over. But like more recently, I don't know. So I'll go with that.
Marissa Tomei didn't look too bad in that either.
So like Chris and Brian, you know, just in case, I always wonder, like when I see Vinny doing it, I'm like, oh crap, I don't know what my favorite movie is. But I think
I don't know if I could. Yeah.
You good men.
With the Instagram lives, though, I actually text the kids beforehand so that they think about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I'm going with Anchorman.
Yeah, that's up there. I gotta say that was a classic.
Favorite band?
Cool.
For like classic rock band, I would probably say Led Zeppelin.
Nice. All right. What favorite actor?
Adam Sandler.
Chris, who's yours?
I'm gonna save it for when Vinny has me on live.
All right. I'm gonna share mine. Jason Bateman. Favorite food? Come on, give me a good Italian dish.
Probably manicotti.
All right. Not bad. You guys got anything for Vin?
No, it's been great, man. This is awesome. I think it was good for us to, you know, have this little chatter because,
yeah,
you know, he gets to, you know, a lot of times he's asking everybody else the questions. Nobody asks him what he thinks, so you know his perspective, and I think this was a good opportunity.
No, I think, you know, no offense to your previous stuff, Vin, but I'm even more impressed. So,
thank you.
Now, Chris, how about the first couple? What was it? The second we talked about hard work or something. Remember, I was giving a shot to all those kids sharing interviews to Axcess Baseball or videos. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
They were sharing the videos, and
yeah, of all the soft toss going on with kids hitting home, little league home runs.
You know that I was listening to that, and I knew exactly what you were referring to because I gotta say that was an interesting time because I wanted to get content out there, and I think, you know, the ones that I posted like on, you know, for the most part, the ones that made it to the post were the upper echelon kids, but then there were a million that was just like, come on, like lose my number.
I was gonna send you my 5-year-old just for fun.
You know, and I tell you what, Ben, we're tough critics. So I mean, it's not meant with any maliciousness. It's just, you know,
oh no,
we're just hard to please.
Hey, Vinny,
I know what you mean,
Vinny. I took a lot of screenshots of those kids for my future recruiting. I did. So,
you did? Oh,
yeah.
You're being serious. I'll say thank you.
No, but you're not understanding. He's crossing them off his list.
No, I got. I love how there's like so and so 2027. I'm like, oh geez, he might be good in 10 years. I'm gonna take a screenshot of this kid.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you say that because like it's amazing how when you hear like 6th grade and then you hear what their graduating year is, it almost like I'm like, wait, where was I when this kid was born? Like, it's just, it's scary. But I've seen a couple like with, let's say Marcus's brother, for example, like his dad will send 2025, and it's like, oh my God, 2025. Well, let's try to. Are we even going to be alive then? Come on. So but some of the kids were good, but it's a blessing and a curse because when I see in the good thing with Instagram is that you can delete the DM without them seeing it if you don't accept it. So
you just let out your secret sauce.
I had to do that.
12 people know what you do now.
I had to do that to a couple people, but they take advantage of it. You know, the people that have the best intentions with it, I think it's authentic. I'm definitely going to put it up. But when it's like, oh no, this didn't get on any other page, Vinny's gonna do it because it's Long Island and he's easy. So those are the ones that I get turned off by, so they don't make it on. But I'm glad
we're just having fun with you. It's all good, man. It really is.
Yeah. On a more serious note, Vin, I know we talked about maybe letting you go right now, but I actually want to pick your brain about something. And nobody knows, but do you have any sense or any feeling on when we're gonna play baseball again? Like, do you? I mean, because
I'm glad you asked today because I actually just spoke with Sandy Krull from the Hamptons League, and I didn't really know what was going on until I spoke with her. And basically she told me they're not very optimistic about it happening because of all the people that are traveling. And once Cape Cod did it, that was kind of like the first domino to fall when they canceled. So she told me they're playing out a couple scenarios where they might be able to get it in. And the best case scenario would be, obviously, once the May 15th date comes around, Cuomo needs to waive, some of the restrictions so that people can actually go outside. That would be the first thing. Number two, she said they're probably going to have to cut the amount of teams in half for it. So since a lot of kids from out of state aren't willing to come to Long Island right now, she said instead of there being 8 teams, it would probably be 4. And then the other challenge is that there's not going to be a lot of housing available because people aren't going to be comfortable letting kids into their house. And then also any field that's a high school, they're not allowed to use if the schools aren't open. So that limits them, I think, to Riverhead, North Fork, and Sag Harbor, and Baseball Heaven. But Baseball Heaven, she said that would be more costly, so that's probably out. So there's really like 3 fields that they can use, and the kids aren't going to be allowed to sit in the dugout, so they would have to space out in the stands, and there would be no parents. So it's very limited. And but I think they're in a different case because kids are coming from all over the place. As far as like, can the Boys of Summer play? I think so. Everybody's local, and they already have the field permits. So if it's any like town fields, they're going to be able to use it. So in speaking with Greg Sarah Jr. 2 days ago, he was optimistic. And Rich Gentile, who runs the East Coast Youth, which is like younger ages, he was.
Hey, we're not interested in that one. Let's move on to hot stove.
They think they're going to play at some point. I mean, I just think the Hamptons League is in a tough spot because if they can't get the season started by June 1st or June 15th. I mean, the college kids need a different place to play. So they're not going to wait around for July 1st if they have an opportunity to play in another state, maybe that is not hit as hard. So I think the Hamptons is in a very tough spot, and I think their decision will get announced soon. She said she doesn't want to wait until May 15th because college kids want to know what they're doing beforehand. So I don't think it's looking good for them.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard it there.
Breaking news. That was breaking news right there.
Vinny, I know we almost got you an hour here. I apologize.
It's all good.
Yeah. But thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be good for kids to hear, even just learn and deal with the media and what it all means,
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. I really look, I would maybe say if I had something else to do, I would hint that I had to go, but I'm looking for things to do at this point. There's no baseball and I can only watch so much Netflix. So anytime you guys want to talk for the next 2 weeks, I'm more than willing to. But I appreciate it, and hopefully we get some baseball this summer. I mean, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yep, fingers crossed. And I think we all, we're looking forward to that. And, we'll just have to take a wait and see approach, obviously. But thanks again for coming on, Vinny.
My pleasure.
Thanks to the audience for tuning in and listening to our guest today. And until next time, Wild Pitch Podcast.